I'm Captain Maya Torres, U.S. Army Logistics Officer, 38 years old. And I never thought my own sister would turn on me like this. Last October, I walked into her house for what was supposed to be a family meeting about our parents' estate. For 6 years, I'd funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into her life, covering the mortgage, her husband's shaky business, even their endless parade of parties. But that day my sister Elena, backed by her husband Victor and his pretentious parents, looked me square in the eye and said, "Maya, you don't belong here. This isn't your place." She asked me to leave in front of everyone like I was some intruder. My chest tightened, but years in uniform had trained me not to show weakness under fire. I grabbed my keys, walked out, and drove away. My hands shook on the wheel, not from fear but fury. They thought they could humiliate me and keep living off my dime. Negative. I'm not the kind of soldier you push aside and expect to stay silent. What I did next detonated their carefully built world, and they had no one to blame but themselves. Stick around because this story escalates fast. You want to see how I took back what was mine. Started 2 years ago when our parents passed. Their estate was modest, a small house, some savings, but it needed to be settled. Elena insisted we meet at her place. I figured it would be quick, paperwork, signatures done. I didn't realize I was marching straight into an ambush. Her house was a showpiece. Marble counters, crystal chandeliers, the kind of staged perfection that screams money. The irony? I'd bankrolled most of it, but I never threw it in her face. That's not how I operate. The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon. I arrived in my usual jeans and field jacket, no frills. Elena greeted me with a smile too polished to be real. Victor leaned against the kitchen island like he was commander-in-chief. His parents, Charles and Marlene Vega, sat at the dining table sipping wine, staring at me like I'd dragged mud across their parade ground. The tension was thick before I'd even sat down. Elena started with estate talk, her voice sweet but practiced. I nodded, ready to track the details. Then Victor cut in. "Maya, we're selling the house and reinvesting in our company. It's the smart move for the family." Family. As if I hadn't been the one covering their bills for years. I asked what exactly he meant by family. That's when Charles cleared his throat. "Let's be honest," he said, oozing condescension. "You're not equipped to handle these decisions. Your background doesn't fit our vision." My background? I'd built my auto shop from the ground up after active duty, grinding through 60-hour weeks. I'd held their lives together. Marlene chimed in with her syrupy smile. "We're thinking long-term, dear. Elena and Victor have connections and image to maintain. You're more small town." The word landed like a slap. I looked to Elena, expecting her to step in. She stayed silent, eyes fixed on her bracelet. I kept my voice steady, controlled, the way I'd been trained to brief commanders. "I've paid for this house. Your business. Your cars. Your vacations. And now you're telling me I don't belong." Victor laughed, short and cruel. "Don't make this about money. You're not sophisticated enough for this discussion." That's when Elena finally spoke, her tone cold as steel. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Maybe it's better if you leave." I froze. My own sister, the one I'd sacrificed for, choosing them over me. Charles leaned back smirking, Marlene sipped her wine, and Victor stood there smug like he'd won a battle I didn't even know we were fighting. My pulse spiked, but I refused to break. "You want me gone?" I asked, standing tall. "Fine. I'm gone." Elena muttered, "It's for the best." I walked to the door, boots striking their polished floor like a cadence. Each step cut like a knife, but I kept my head high. They wouldn't see me crumble. Driving home, my grip on the wheel turned my knuckles white. For 6 years I'd poured my strength and savings into their lives, and they tossed me aside like dead weight. They thought they could use me, humiliate me, and keep their picture-perfect life intact. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That night I barely slept. My mind replayed every smirk, every dismissal. I thought about the overtime hours, the deployments where I skipped leave, the vacations I never took. All to keep their world afloat. And for what? To be told I didn't belong. 3 days later I made my move. At dawn I sat at my kitchen counter, the glow of my banking app lighting the room. 4 years, I'd wired $6,000 monthly for their mortgage, plus another $1,000 for utilities and insurance. Those payments had been on autopilot. Not anymore. With a few clicks I canceled every transfer. Mortgage, power, insurance, gone. It felt like cutting a set of chains I hadn't even realized were shackled to me. I didn't bother warning them. The bank notices would hit their mailbox soon enough. 5 days later, my phone buzzed while I was elbow-deep in a transmission at my shop. Victor's voice was strained, trying for casual but failing. "Maya, we're in a bind. The company launch is coming up. We need just 10 grand for catering materials, a few finishing touches. A small loan. For Elena's sake." I set my tools down, wiped the grease from my hands, and kept my tone sharp. "You didn't need me at your family meeting, Victor. Why need me now?" He stumbled, then tried to pivot. "It's for the business, for Elena." Elena saw. The same sister who'd stood by and let them throw me out. "No," I said flatly. "You'll manage without me." I hung up, my pulse steady but triumphant. That refusal wasn't just about money. It was about standing firm. Cutting that thread meant their perfect image was already unraveling. But I wasn't done. I had a bigger op in motion. That night, I pulled open my file cabinet and spread years of records across my dining table. Bank statements, transfers, receipts. Every dime I'd funneled into their lives, meticulously logged like mission reports. This wasn't just paperwork. It was evidence. They wanted to write me out of their story. I was going to make sure the truth detonated right in the middle of their launch. I called my boyfriend Aaron Vega, a steady-headed engineer who'd seen firsthand how much I'd sacrificed. He came over, scanning the stacks of documents. "They've been using you, Maya. Time to show the world." His words fueled me. "They think they can bury me," I said. "I'll make sure they can't." Aaron didn't press for details. He just looked at me and said, "I'm with you all the way." That trust lit a fire in me. I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Over the next 10 days, I worked late nights digitizing every piece of evidence. Scanning receipts, saving statements, pulling emails where Victor acknowledged my payments. Each file was another round of ammunition loaded and ready. The launch was coming. And so was my reckoning. Each file I scanned became another piece of the puzzle, proof of the life I'd financed for them. Their launch was set for early December, a make-or-break showcase for Asheville's money crowd. I planned to use it as a spotlight so everyone could finally see who they really were. By mid-November, my evidence was squared away. Hundreds of documents labeled, time-stamped, and backed up on an encrypted thumb drive. I didn't know exactly how I'd deploy it yet, but leverage doesn't have to shout to be powerful. Elena and Victor thought they could sideline me and keep the polish. Negative. I had the receipts. One night after I closed my laptop, a calm settled in, the same quiet that hits before a mission steps off. This wasn't about cash or payback anymore. It was about worth. They'd counted on my silence. I was done playing by their script. Just before Christmas, I walked into the Blue Laurel Hotel for Elena and Victor's big unveiling, ready to correct the record. The ballroom was packed. Investors in sharp suits, clients balancing champagne, local owners trading cards over past hors d'oeuvres. Elena held court near the stage in a sleek black dress, smiling like she owned the map. Victor worked the room with a tightened grin. I carried a slim folder. Bank statements, wires, invoices, clean copies of everything I'd shouldered for their mortgage, utilities, and startup costs. The thumb drive in my pocket was my redundancy plan. Aaron Cole had offered to stand by my side, but I told him this part was mine to run. I wore a navy blazer and slacks. Simple kit, steady stance. Victor took the podium and rolled a glossy slideshow of luxury listings. "Cedar Crest Realty is about trust, vision, and Asheville's future," he said. Elena stood shoulder to shoulder, nodding on cue. The crowd clapped. I clocked the details. Cut-rate appetizers, no open bar. 10 grand can make a lot of problems disappear. Without it, the seams start to show. When Victor opened the floor for questions, expecting softballs, I raised my hand. Heads turned. Elena's smile faltered. "I've got one," I said, voice even. "You talk about trust. How do you square that with building this company on someone else's money?" A ripple moved through the room. Victor's jaw tightened. "Captain Torres, this isn't the place," he tried, aiming for a chuckle and missing. "Oh, I think it's exactly the place." I opened the folder. 6 years at $6,000 a month for your mortgage. Thousands more for utilities. Startup expenses for this very company. I held up a statement. Numbers clear, names unmistakable. Hundreds of thousands. From my account. Why didn't that make your disclosures? Silence. Elena stepped forward, cheeks flushed. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "This is our business, not yours." "Your business." I met her eyes. "I funded it. Every dollar you burned came from me, and you know it." I read from a wire. 20,000 January 2020 office lease. My name, not yours. Whispers spread like brushfire. An investor in a gray suit stood. "If she financed you, why isn't she on your cap table?" Another added, "And what else didn't you disclose?" Victor tried to steady the ship. Talk of temporary family support, bridge loans, nothing material. The room wasn't buying it. That's when Charles Vega shouldered through the crowd. "Outrageous," he barked, face flushing. "You have no right to disrupt this event." Marlene clutched his sleeve. He shook her off. "You're embarrassing yourself," he snapped at me. I didn't move. "With respect, Mr. Vega, you should be embarrassed. You watched them spend my money for years and treated me like I didn't exist." I lifted the folder. "I have records for every payment. Mortgage, utilities, even their insurance. They built this company on my back. That ends tonight." A woman in the front row, local business owner, raised a hand. "Can we see the documents?" "Absolutely." I passed copies down the row. The buzz swelled as pages changed hands and totals landed. Elena's voice rose, brittle. "It's a misunderstanding. Maya offered to help. We never forced her." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Offered? You begged." "I gave because I believed family shows up. Family doesn't erase you." A tall man in pinstripes stood. "If her funding is real, why isn't she listed as a stakeholder?" Another voice. "This smells like bad governance. Why should we trust any of your numbers?" Victor's polish cracked. A few guests headed for the exits, murmuring. Charles tried one last volley. "This is a private matter. She's jealous of our success." His outburst only hardened the stares. In the back, a reporter from the Blue Ridge Ledger scribbled notes, eyes locked on my exhibits. I didn't need to raise my voice. The paperwork spoke louder than anything I could say. And for the first time the room saw exactly who had been carrying whom. I caught the reporter's eye and gave a small nod. Tessa Ward, editor at the Blue Ridge Ledger, would be hearing from me, but not tonight. I stepped back and let the room absorb the blast radius. Elena was near tears, clinging to Victor's sleeve. He was sweating through his smile, trying to placate investors still firing questions. Marlene hovered, helpless. Charles scanned the exits like a man looking for an escape route. The ballroom that had buzzed with excitement now hummed with doubt. I didn't need another word. The paperwork had spoken. On my way out, a few guests stopped me asking for copies. One investor in a red dress gripped my hand. "You did the right thing. They can't bury this." I nodded, and for the first time in years, the weight I'd carried for them eased off my shoulders. I wasn't just the sister they'd dismissed. I was the one who'd kept their world standing, and I'd just pulled the curtain. Leaving the hotel, I felt lighter. Their polished image was cracking, and they had no one to blame but themselves. But this wasn't over. Their next move would show me just how low they'd go. I was ready. A week after the launch, I woke to a headline splashed across the Blue Ridge Ledger. "Local mechanic sabotages family business out of spite." My stomach dropped. Byline: Tessa Ward. The story painted me as a bitter outsider who crashed Elena and Victor's event to tear them down. It quoted Elena calling me an interfering nobody and Victor claiming I'd exaggerated my role in their finances. Every line twisted the truth, erasing the hundreds of thousands I'd poured into their lives. By noon, my phone was a live wire. Strangers called me greedy, a liar, even a homewrecker. A few regulars canceled appointments at my shop. Concerns about character. In a town like Asheville, judgment travels faster than fact. I sat at my kitchen table, hands shaking, the paper spread open like a target. They weren't just dodging the truth, they were trying to salt the earth. Aaron came as soon as I called. He read the piece, jaw set. "They're scared," he said, laying the paper down. "This is their counterattack because you exposed them." He was right. It didn't make the hit any softer. "I'm not letting this stand," I told him. "We clear my name." That afternoon I reached out to Elise Hart, a freelance reporter I'd met at a local mixer. Elise had a reputation for digging where others wouldn't. We met at a downtown cafe. I slid a condensed packet of my records across the table. Bank statements, wire confirmations, invoices, everything I'd used to prop up Elena and Victor. This is the real story, I said. Elise leafed through the pages, eyes widening. This is big. Why not go public sooner? Because I thought family meant something, I said. They taught me otherwise. She took notes and promised to help, but first I needed to put the ledger on notice. That evening I drafted a formal demand letter to Tessa Ward, precise, professional with exhibits attached. I listed the factual errors, identified the missing disclosures, and requested a printed correction and a chance to present my side. I included scans of mortgage payments, utilities, and startup costs. The next morning her reply landed. No retraction. She offered a follow-up if I provided more proof. It smelled like a trap, but I sent additional records anyway. Emails where Victor thanked me for covering expenses, line items matching my transfers to their bills. Meanwhile, Elise pitched the story to the Mountain Signal, an independent paper with a spine. We'll tell it straight, she said. Your documents do the talking. The backlash got uglier before it got better. My shop's reviews dipped with anonymous smears. A former client came by to say he'd heard I was trying to ruin a good family. Each punch landed. Aaron kept me grounded. Stand fast, he said one night, squeezing my hand. They don't get to rewrite reality. Elise and I spent late hours shaping the piece, tight, verifiable, with a clean chain of custody for every document. I detailed every payment. $6,000 a month for the mortgage, thousands more for business costs, down to their phone bill. We even included a 2021 email from Victor. Couldn't have done it without you, thank you. Elise added context on how Cedar Crest Realty's numbers would raise red flags for any serious investor. On December 15th, the Mountain Signal ran the story. The hidden backer behind Cedar Crest Realty. A sister's sacrifice. It spread fast. Locals shared it. Comments shifted. People called out Elena and Victor for using my money and then erasing me. A few customers came back. One brought coffee and said, "You didn't deserve that." It wasn't a full recovery, but it was momentum. The ledger didn't retract, but they printed a timid clarification, acknowledging new evidence that I'd played a significant role in Cedar Crest's finances. Too little too late. The Signal had already reset the narrative. Investors who'd been wobbling after the launch pulled out. I heard whispers that Victor was scrambling for clients, doors quietly closing. I took Elise to lunch to thank her. You gave me a voice, I said, handing her a small bookstore gift card. You gave me the receipts, she smiled. This town needed the truth. That night Aaron and I celebrated with greasy pizza and bad TV. You're unstoppable, he said, raising a slice. I laughed for the first time in weeks. But I knew the fight wasn't finished. Elena and Victor were down, not out. Whatever came next, I'd face it head-on. 4 months after the Signal piece, spring settled over the mountains. I stood in a wildflower field outside Asheville, ready to marry Aaron. The April sun warmed my shoulders. Honeysuckle hung in the air. My dress was simple, nothing like the flash Elena favors. Under a wooden arch draped with daisies, Aaron smiled at me like the world had finally gone quiet. Friends and loyal customers filled the chairs, their cheers reminding me I'd rebuilt my place here. This wasn't just love, it was a clean chapter. Business crept back. Some clients brought apology notes. A retired teacher left a homemade pie with, "You showed them what integrity looks like." Small towns hold grudges, but I wasn't the villain anymore. Elena and Victor weren't so lucky. Cedar Crest Realty buckled under the weight of their own spin. The investors who'd hesitated after the launch bailed completely once my records showed how misrepresented the finances were. By February, the company filed for bankruptcy. Word was they sold the house, the same one I paid for, to cover debts, then left Asheville by March, chasing a fresh start somewhere else. I didn't feel joy at their fall. I didn't feel sorry either. They chose the lie. Now they live with it. Charles and Marlene Vega, Victor's parents, faded into the background after the fallout. A week after the Mountain Signal piece, Marlene mailed a short note. "We didn't realize how much you carried for them. We're sorry we didn't step in." It wasn't much, but it was enough. I didn't respond. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Charles never reached out, and his silence said more than any argument we'd ever had. The Blue Ridge Ledger faced its own reckoning. After my open letter and the Signal exposé, readers flooded their inbox demanding accountability for the hit piece. In January, editor Tessa Ward ran a stiff little note. We regret any inaccuracies in our coverage of Cedar Crest Realty and Captain Maya Torres's contributions. Not the apology I wanted, but it closed the file. Elise told me Tessa's reputation took a dent with other local reporters. That felt like justice enough. When I walked down the aisle that spring, Elise Hart sat in the front row, snapping a few photos for a small mountain signal write-up about Asheville's favorite mechanic tying the knot. She'd become a friend, the kind who believes the truth deserves daylight. The ceremony was short and steady, vows like clear orders. Aaron's voice didn't waver. "You're the strongest person I know." My throat tightened thinking about every fight he'd stood through beside me. We danced under string lights while a local band rolled out bluegrass. My crew from the shop, people who never flinched when the town did, raised their glasses. One of them, a gruff tech we call Gus, shouted, "To Captain Torres, who never backs down." Laughter broke over the field like a wave, and for the first time in a long time, Asheville felt completely like home. These were my people. This was my unit. Later, sitting with Aaron as the sun slid behind the ridge, I thought about Elena. I didn't hate her. Hate is just weight. She chose to build on deception, and it cost her everything. The business, the house, her standing in this town. I kept giving, thinking it would keep us close. Turns out family isn't about how much you hand over. It's about respect. I'd spent years trying to earn hers, only to learn it was never mine to win. Standing up for myself cost me a sister. It gave me something better, my own ground. If I could talk to my younger self, I'd say this: count your worth, not your withdrawals. You can pour everything into someone and still not be enough if they refuse to see you. But when you stand tall and insist on the truth, the right people rally. People like Aaron, Elise, and the customers who came back. That's what carries you forward, not the drag of someone else's expectations. If you've stayed with me to the end, thank you for your time and your attention. You saw the low points, watched the fight, and now you're here for the best day of my life. If any part of this hit home, if you've ever had to draw a line, pick your high ground, or choose your own unit, tell me in the comments. And if you want more real stories told straight, you know what to do.